As I narrate this video, Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia are on the brink of being banned. Declared extremists on a par with ISIS, their organisations are to be liquidated and their property seized. Let's take a look at what happens the day after the ban. Let's start off with what happens to ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses. What will it look like to be one of the 170,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia days or weeks after the ban comes into force? Well, they will still believe that theirs is the one and only true religion. In fact, they will believe this even more fervently because they've been warned that Christ's followers can expect persecution. Their kingdom halls may be seized, but they will continue to meet in private homes under constant fear that the authorities will track them down, break up their meetings, and throw some of them in jail. Despite all this, they will continue preaching. Don't believe me? Take a look at the bottom of every single annual report in the yearbooks of Jehovah's Witnesses. The report for 2016 showed 40,000 witnesses globally preaching despite living in countries where their beliefs are outlawed. The difference between regular witnesses and those living in banned countries is that they can point to their persecution as evidence of a global conspiracy and further proof that we are living in the last days before Armageddon. What about shunning? Jehovah's Witnesses will continue to shun disfellowshipped family members because they will still believe in the authority of the religious leaders who commanded them to do so. What about blood transfusions? Jehovah's Witnesses will continue to refuse them, only they will be less likely to admit themselves to hospital for treatment in case, by refusing blood, they risk identifying themselves as part of an extremist movement. What about child abuse? Pedophile Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia, and statistically speaking they must exist, will continue looking for opportunities to prey on children. The only difference is the authorities will be even more powerless to intervene. If you're a Russian elder who has received an allegation of abuse, are you more likely or less likely to report it to the authorities if doing so will identify you as an extremist? But what about the leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses the day after the ban? Meet the governing body, the group of men in New York who are responsible for formulating the teachings, practices and policies of Jehovah's Witnesses globally, including those that serve to break up families through shunning, put children in harm's way by covering up child abuse, and even kill people by coercing them to refuse blood transfusions. The day after the ban, what will these men be doing? They will each get up from a peaceful night's sleep. They will head to the Bethel dining room for morning worship, perhaps speaking a few words about the need to pray for the brothers in Russia before tucking in to a hearty breakfast. They will then go about their normal activities, perhaps being stopped occasionally in the corridors by touring Jehovah's Witnesses who are eager to shake their hands and grab a quick selfie. In short, nothing changes for the governing body the day after 170,000 of their brainwashed followers in Russia start getting picked off one by one by the Russian authorities. While Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia suffer, their leaders will carry on as normal. If you are a former Jehovah's Witness watching this video, you might be unfazed by all this. A part of you might even be glad that the ban is happening. About time, you might say. But here are 3 reasons why you should be horrified at the Russian ban. Firstly, there is the need to stand up and show compassion and solidarity for your fellow humans. You might be reasoning, Well, what's the big deal? It's going to happen regardless of what I think. Why do we need to argue about it? Why can't we all just get along? Well, imagine you were a still believing Jehovah's Witness who was starting to look online and see what apostates were saying about the ban. How do you think you would feel to see multiple apostate YouTube channels cheerleading for Vladimir Putin's Russian regime in its moves to strip your fellow believers in Russia of their religious freedoms and attacking any who urge restraint?
If the Russian government chooses to ban the Jehovah's Witnesses, good!
I don't give a crap about their human rights as an organization.
From how I see it, Russia is working in the interests of their citizens.
Poor Jehovah's Witnesses. They're just so beat up. They're just innocent Christians just trying to go about their business.
And where is Jehovah, their God, going to deliver them from Vladimir Putin? We need to laugh at Jehovah's Witnesses.
So I say, ban them, cut it dead, cut the head of the snake off there.
We have someone aggressively, actively, very vocally going against the ban and saying that it's a terrible idea.
John Cedars, if you're really going to elect yourself as the voice of the silent majority, then maybe you should be more careful with what you say.
I believe he is dangerous to the activist world. He's got his arm around Jehovah's Witnesses. I believe he is an apologist now.
I do too.
If you were a Jehovah's Witness who was beginning to doubt, would these videos, made by embittered people who have clearly forgotten what it means to be a genuine witness believer, make you more likely to listen to apostate sources or less likely? Real ex-JW activism is about reaching out to help Jehovah's Witnesses with compassion and understanding. This goal is not achieved by celebrating their unjust persecution and oppression. Secondly, there is the persecution complex. What the Russian authorities are doing is actually helping the governing body by giving it a reason to point at world developments and say, look, we told you the authorities would turn on true followers of Christ just before Armageddon, and it's already happening in Russia. Gloating over persecution has been an intrinsic element of JW history from the earliest beginnings of the movement. It is because the authorities came for Rutherford in 1918 that he was able to make a case for his movement being uniquely favoured by God. What Russia is doing is bolstering Watchtower's theological claims and giving them a stream of persecution stories that will fuel the next few decades of Watchtower propaganda. And finally, there are human rights. Nobody should be made to suffer by their government for the ideas they have in their head, no matter how wrong those ideas are and no matter how the ideas got there. To police a person's religion is to police a person's mind, and to stay silent or indifferent on the erosion of this fundamental right of all humans to believe what they want is to stand aside and hold the door open for the kind of world George Orwell warned about. Look, I get it. This doesn't affect you personally. After all, it isn't you or your family or your neighbours who are being rounded up like criminals and thrown in jail cells. You might even savour the spectacle of 170,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in some faraway land being hounded in the street, being harassed by police officers and rent-a-thugs, being interrogated and being thrown in jail for months or years. The thought of all that might give you a sense of poetic justice. It might make you feel better about the hurt and pain you have suffered, perhaps as a result of shunning or some other mental or physical abuse you experienced as a witness. If I'm describing you please know that you are not mentally ill simply for wanting justice for what happened to you and for wanting Watchtower to pay for its many abuses. However, it's crucial to differentiate between the governing body and the manipulated people who follow them. In the event of a ban in any country, the Watchtower leadership doesn't suffer at all. At worst, they get a small dent in their property portfolio. Apart from that, proof of government oppression only makes them stronger and enhances their control. If you understand all this, and yet you still relish the thought of innocent people, fathers, mothers, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, whom you have never met, suffering for something that was done to you by the governing body, something these people had no control over, something they are just as likely to have done to them either now or in the future, how can you claim the moral high ground? How can you convince a wavering believer that you can offer them a future of genuine joy and happiness, free from bitterness and resentment? Please let go of your hate. Show your love and humanity. Be the better person.